The bizarre horror film based on a bizarre web series, Backrooms probably left you with more questions than answers. Let's break down what the ending really meant and how it connects to the established Backrooms lore. Although Backrooms has been designed as a standalone thing, there are still plenty of nods to more expansive, pre-established lore of the Backrooms. Things that were introduced in the YouTube shorts by Kane Parsons. The movie doesn't exactly explain what's causing the phenomena behind the walls, but frequently alludes to the fact that a team of researchers have been studying it for quite some time. The movie takes place in summer 1990. The opening found footage videotape is dated 19th of June, and the CCTV footage of Clark's first visit is dated to the 29th. In the timeline of the YouTube series, this is a pivotal moment, taking place a month after the Async Research Institute faked the death of employee Peter Tench to cover up their experimental and highly deadly research, only for him to reappear and escape back to the world above. That might not be referenced directly here, but the failed mission we see in the found footage cold open, as well as Mary's extremely evasive interrogation session led by Phil at the movie's close, suggests the organization are doing all they can to hide more skeletons than ever. Sprayed with the mysterious gas by a team in hazmat suits, after escaping from the giant Clark pirate creature chasing her, Mary is led to an interrogation room. On her way there, we get some further cryptic clues about Async's research. For example, a storage room filled with dozens of the same cardboard cutout man they tied a bilingual tape recorder to, which was their big gambit to try to gain contact with the creature. Phil tells her that his institute used to make MRI machines, but since finding this place, they become fully committed to mapping it out. He doesn't elaborate on the plans specifically, but tells her nothing in recorded history means more. This is accelerated by a closing montage featuring various landmarks from Mary's life that ends on an image of her tied to a chair with the same warped facial rendering as the humanoid creatures we saw with Clark earlier on. It's left open to interpretation whether this is a replica the rooms have made, feeding off her energy while she was inside them, or if the lore has advanced to the point that she personally has transformed due to being stuck down there for so long. It's most likely the former. After Clark led his two young employees into the Backrooms, both met a grisly end. But rather than doing the obvious thing and getting out of there, he chose to stay and make it his new home. Calling his therapist Mary, he cryptically tells her that he's opened the window and won't be coming back, heightening her concern after he used their last session to rant to her exclusively about his discovery behind the store walls.
It's beautiful. Am I right?
We learn after he kidnaps her that he's still obsessing over their recent therapy session, which involved her role-playing his ex-wife in a bid to address his alcoholism and relationship issues. But despite professionally unpacking the internal trauma of others, Mary's own personal emotional torment is kept locked up. The demolition of her childhood home that we saw at the start of the film has brought back memories of growing up with a mother who appeared to have suffered from an unspecified mental illness. She never verbalizes as much, but it's clear she sees Clark's psychotic break as similar to her own childhood domestic situation. When the creature appears as a giant Clark and kills him, she's only able to make her escape because she weakens it by attacking it with a rock she had earlier pocketed from her office, a totem harking back to an earlier childhood memory. She manages to outrun it, but she ultimately can't escape the Backrooms, which now feature multiple recreations of landmarks from her life. In a way, her past has finally caught up to her. In the brief web series episode Prototype, we're told that a high-ranking employee named Philip R. Heyman conducted an experiment in 1982 of what will become to be known as the Low-Proximity Magnetic Distortion System. This is a device Async used to travel between the real world and the Backrooms, and this prototype experiment was shown to be successful when an object is successfully transported into the other dimensional space. This character is never again referenced in the web series, but the Phil we meet here is still a high-ranking researcher, even if he isn't the man at the top. That's presumably still President Ivan Beck, who is unseen here, but is a major force in that source material. This is likely why Phil doesn't get to decide the fates of those he interrogates, purely acting out of an attempt to understand how other people perceive this space. Although they're a research institute, Async has highly corporate intentions with the Backrooms, which the web series explores in greater detail. If you're familiar with that, then you'll know Clark's decision to move in and coexist with the creature acts as an unintentional test case for their ultimate plan. By telling us that they previously made MRI machines and received government grants into their research in this arena, Backrooms goes one step further than the preceding web series in establishing what the organization got up to before they fully dedicated themselves to exploring this new dimension. But their specific motives are left unclear. Luckily, Parsons' web series fills in those blanks.
What is the low proximity magnetic distortion system? Using 32.
In 1988, founder Ivan Beck announced at a press conference that the company was working on a solution to all current and future storage and residential needs, which would end up saving the world billions. In other words, after early experiments with the low-proximity magnetic distortion system proved successful, they established a new project named Project KV31, with the intention of solving the housing crisis. Unfortunately, in the web series, subsequent tests wind up tearing a hole in the fabric of reality, with many unfortunate souls falling into the backrooms to solid ground, never to return again. In the series timeline, no conclusive research has ever found a way of taming the creatures who live inside, meaning the idea of human coexistence within this space remains ridiculous. Kane Parsons didn't invent the concept of the backrooms. He was inspired to make his own web series a few years after seeing the original meme starter trend in liminal space photography. By that time, there was already pre-existing lore about what the backrooms were, which he pushed in a more overtly sci-fi direction. Despite the obvious connection between the movie and the series, he has also claimed that his intention was to keep links to that more expansive source material to a minimum, but he also wanted to make sure both parts were connected and didn't contradict. He told Sci-Fi Now magazine, "I despise a retcon, and I wouldn't know what to do with myself if suddenly we were telling two versions of the same story. It'd be like two different alternate realities that are just barely touching, and I would never be able to reconcile that in my head." In that same interview, he discussed wanting to return to the simplicity of his earliest shorts and avoid lore bloat at all costs, knowing that for most viewers, this will likely be their first entry point. This means that while there are plenty of allusions to async operations, none of their schemes from the series are directly referenced. This is also why the only named character from the organization here is a minor one, who barely factors into the series lore. Winks to the devoted fanbase are kept to the barest minimum. One thing the movie expands on is the idea of mutations when someone enters the backrooms. In the web series, dead bodies discovered by researchers have grown mold while decaying, the first sign humans can be mutated upon entering.
May I ask where this subject came from?
The movie doubles down on this idea by having the memories of individuals appear in warped form the longer they spend down there. In the production notes released to press by A24, Parsons said, "What if it's not only buildings and objects that can be replicated, but also human beings? What if we're not special in any particular way?" Talking to Sci-Fi Now, the director also said, "With this film, I wanted to make sure that we're coming from a more psychological perspective, looking at these characters' inner worlds and how that colors the backrooms." In short, the movie's biggest addition to the pre-existing lore is revealing that the environment of the backrooms is directly affected by the people who enter there, with the space digging deeper into someone's subconscious to try to replicate objects, locations, and even people from their life. Clark offers a fairly direct explanation after kidnapping Mary, telling her this place remembers things slightly wrong.
And the more times it remembers something, the less it does.
Objects like the store furniture are replicated in ways which sink into the floor. Signage from the real world appears as its mirror image, and human faces are distorted, with a marshmallow-like substance where flesh and bone is supposed to be. Whether you can take this psychologically broken man's reading at face value is a different question. Maybe it's only people with the most damaged psychology who shape the environment to this extent. Clark indirectly causes two employees to get killed after asking them to go deeper into the backrooms with him and record the evidence, showing signs of obsession even before he fully snapped and kidnapped Mary. It's a surprising character arc, considering that the trailer painted him as a traditional horror protagonist who only wanted to find out why this mysterious space was behind the walls of his furniture store.
You still haven't told us what we're doing here, man.
I did tell you. Research.
He becomes sociopathic in his desire to change past mistakes and recreate them in a world he can control, and only gets his comeuppance after realizing that the backrooms can't be governed. In this sense, it's far closer to a traditional supernatural horror like The Shining. Jack Torrance is also a troubled family man battling alcoholism, whose refusal to accept his personal and professional commitments saw him become an easy mark for the spirits of the Overlook Hotel. Extensive time in the backrooms caused Clark to undergo the same transformation. He's determined to regain the control he's felt slipping away in the real world and ends up strangling Mary and kidnapping her just after they're first reunited. It's not directly stated that these impulses have only manifested because of his time in there, but it's clear that he at least begins acting on them in a way that he never had before. The most charitable reading is that he's a tragic hero, whose own emotions have become as warped by the backrooms as the physical manifestations of his memories themselves. The web series was inspired by liminal space photography, which evokes a sense of nostalgia in a lot of people. You've probably felt this yourself. That uncanny feeling of returning to a lost, empty world is a theme brought to the forefront of the psychological horror in the movie. It explains why someone like Clark would be so eager to keep exploring, upon seeing furniture from his store and other various items from his life recreated inside. He keeps wandering deeper, looking for other things that might be comfortingly familiar.
It's a real mess. But also beautiful.
Even the big red flag of the creatures he spots doesn't turn him off. He goes on to see them as improvements due to their inability to feel pain or fear. Parsons has said this tainted nostalgia aspect is inherent to the world he's created, and that sucking people in via those loose memories is how it gets you. However, everything has been replicated slightly wrong. It feels uncanny, but nobody could confuse a poorly made resemblance for the real thing. From another point of view, Backrooms could also be subtly offering a commentary on AI, an anxiety-inducing technology that's literally built on our collective past. Speaking to The Australian on this press tour, Parsons made his thoughts on AI tech clear, saying, "If I could snap my fingers and make generative AI disappear forever, I would. The bizarro world he's created is built on warped recreations of memories, growing increasingly less human the further into it you explore. It's a space that translates everything but soul and human emotion, and one could argue that's just like AI." Based purely on how unlikely it is that Mary was allowed to leave, either killed or left to become a mutation by Async, there's very little chance of a direct sequel, especially considering there are no other survivors here to anchor a narrative around. However, with the web series often following an anthology format, documenting the unlucky people who unwillingly enter the Backrooms as much as the ongoing research, this will likely be the approach taken. The Backrooms are endless, and there are countless more sinister neighborhoods lurking behind doors and cracks in the walls that haven't been visited here. The nightmarish Christmas tree room recalls the eerie red neighborhood, for example, and then there's the creature itself, which we never see in its original form here, suggesting there are no restraints to how it can mutate and shapeshift into whatever the eye of the beholder wants to perceive. The lingering mysteries of Backrooms lie in the ways different characters perceive the same spaces. Why did Clark see a wall where his employee on the other side saw a mirror? In adapting Parsons' web series, screenwriter Will Sudik gave more concrete lore to explain why some mysterious events occur, while leaving others like this completely intangible. We don't expect every last mystery to be solved in a sequel, but we expect to find out more, as well as exploring new areas that force us to question everything we've already learned.